Three teenagers were convicted of a brutal triple murder, not because of evidence, not because of witnesses, not because of DNA, but because they wore black clothes, listened to heavy metal, and made people uncomfortable. And when the truth finally surfaced 18 years later, the real killer was still walking free. May 5, 1993. West Memphis, Arkansas, a quiet, unremarkable town in America's deep south, where life moved slowly and everyone knew everyone. That evening, three 8-year-old boys, Steve Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, left their homes to play and never came back. The next morning, their small bodies were found in a drainage ditch near the Robin Hood Hills woods, naked, bound, and bearing signs of savage violence. The town stopped breathing. The question that echoed through every street and every home was the same: who did this? And in a town gripped by fear and fury, police had no evidence, no witnesses, no murder weapon, only the unbearable pressure to find someone, anyone, to blame. That someone became Damien Echols, a 17-year-old who wore a black trench coat, read Stephen King novels, had a deep interest in the occult, and when police called him in for questioning, sat with his eyes closed and swayed gently in his chair. To the officers in that room, that was enough. Damien's two closest friends were swept up with him, Jason Baldwin, just 16 years old, and Jesse Miskelly Jr., 17, with an IQ of 72, meaning he was legally intellectually disabled. Police interrogated Jesse for 12 straight hours, without a lawyer present, without a parent or guardian in the room, and at the end of those 12 hours, he gave a confession. But that confession was riddled with factual errors so glaring they should have destroyed the case on the spot. Jesse got the time of the murders wrong, got the murder weapon wrong, got the location of the wounds wrong, and yet police filed it as evidence anyway, because a confession was all they had ever wanted. When the case went to trial, the prosecution presented no DNA linking the three boys to the crime scene, no fingerprints, no physical evidence of any kind. Instead, they argued to the jury that these were satanic ritual killings, that Damien, Jason, and Jesse were devil worshippers who had sacrificed 3 children in a dark religious ceremony. And this was the 1990s in America, a decade consumed by what historians now call the Satanic Panic, a nationwide hysteria in which ordinary people believed Satanists were lurking in daycare centers, schools, and neighborhoods across the country. The jury deliberated for 11 hours and returned with their verdicts: Jesse Miskelly, guilty, 40 years in prison; Jason Baldwin, guilty, life without parole; Damien Echols, guilty, death row. The town exhaled. The case was closed. But some people refused to let it go. In 1996, filmmakers Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky released a documentary called Paradise Lost: The Child Murders at Robin Hood Hills, and when audiences watched it, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming, because what the film showed, clearly and without manipulation, was that these 3 young men appeared to be innocent, that the investigation had been reckless, that the trial had been a spectacle driven by fear rather than fact. Celebrities mobilized: Johnny Depp, Eddie Vedder, Peter Jackson, pouring money, attention, and public pressure into the fight for a new trial. Legal teams reformed. Forensic experts re-examined the case. And then in 2007, everything changed. DNA testing, technology that simply did not exist in 1993, was finally applied to physical evidence collected from the crime scene. The results were unambiguous: not a single trace of DNA from Damien, Jason, or Jesse was found on any of the 3 victims. But something else was found: a hair, microscopically consistent with Terry Hobbs, the stepfather of victim Steve Branch. Terry Hobbs was not a new name in this story. As far back as 1993, neighbors and acquaintances had noted strange behavior from him in the days surrounding the murders, but police had never once looked in his direction. They had their devil worshippers, and that was enough. In August 2011, after 18 years on death row, Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly walked out of prison. But the story of how that happened is one of the most heartbreaking details in this entire case. When the Alford plea was offered, a legal mechanism in which a defendant acknowledges the prosecution could secure a conviction while maintaining their own innocence, Jason Baldwin refused to take it. He said he would rather die in prison than sign a document calling himself guilty for something he did not do. It was only when Damien Eccles, still on death row, personally called Jason and begged him, told him that he needed Jason to walk free, that he could not carry the weight of Jason dying for his loyalty, that Jason finally agreed. They were listed as guilty on the official record. They received no exoneration, no compensation from the state, no formal acknowledgement that the system had destroyed 18 years of their lives. Terry Hobbs was never charged. The case was never officially reopened. Steve Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, 3 8-year-old boys who went out to play on a May evening in 1993, have still never received justice. This is not just a story about one murder in one small American town. This is a story about what happens when a justice system stops looking for the truth and starts looking for a scapegoat. This is a story about how fear, prejudice, and the pressure to close a case can condemn 3 innocent people to decades behind bars, or to death. And if you think this is only an American story, think again, because the moment any system judges a person by how they look, what they listen to, or how they are different, rather than by evidence and fact, the conditions for another West Memphis are already in place.